do it. We're live.
Shit. All right, let's see.
Give me their Nirvana.
See if it comes through. Here we go. Fear Not Podcast.
Now the decibels are way above the the threshold.
Did it pick it up?
Yeah.
Nice.
If you see the audio, it's like huge spikes.
Get that in post-production.
Man, I'm jealous of that skill.
I don't know about skill. Hitting.
That's like, what, 1 week of practice?
Yeah, and living with a drummer my entire life.
I don't think the skill just comes to you, though. You got to actually do it, right?
I don't know. There's got to be something to like the osmosis of like watching somebody. I mean, I don't know. I spent like a couple days like just figuring out how to get the hands and feet to work differently. But once you do, you just hear it.
Yeah. It's kind of like the when you see a kid who's not that athletic and then you see his dad throw a baseball and you're like, oh, that's the exact same motion.
Yes.
You know, I think that stuff does carry over.
No, that's why I thought it was so funny when I saw your nephew swinging golf club and he looked exactly like you.
Kai, yeah, he's a stud.
No, he is. You can tell. And he's what, like 14 or something?
Not even. I think he's like 12.
Damn. Well, he's got that Jorde height too then because he looks pretty tall.
Yeah, his mother's 5'10", 5'11", and Jake is 6'2", so he's going to be a beast.
Damn. What does he hit from? Like what tees?
Probably like the white bluish. I mean, he's moving up pretty quick. I think he drives it like 260 now. And I mean, wow. Like one tournament, I think he shot like 6 under.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Nice. Well, awesome. We're finally doing this. And God, there's a lot to talk about. But I guess the backstory is the thing. I was thinking about this just the other day, like the COVID interview.
At Oxo?
Like, yeah. And I was up at the lake. We did like the Zoom thing. The first thing I was like, man, this guy should be a news anchor because you look like a news anchor on the thing, all like squared away and the perfect hair and everything. And then I remember telling the guys that work there, I was like, yeah, we definitely need to hire this dude. And then you came in and it was COVID, so there was like nothing to do. So we watched football in the...
During the interview.
Yeah, that was the interview was watching football.
I felt like that was the airport test interview.
What's that?
Where you just test to see if it's a real person and if you'd want to be around them at an airport for 8 hours.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So yeah, I think I flew into Grand Rapids in the middle of winter and there was absolutely nobody there.
Yeah, because that was kind of in the heart of COVID too. Like we were even like, we were all, because we were all young guys. I think it was the only reason, but like nobody else would ever see another person during that time.
Yeah, so I think I did like 2 hours of interviews, and then I think we just had a couple of beers in the office and watched football.
Yeah, that was probably when they put like fake people in the stands at the football games. Yeah. And then, fast forward. I was pretty much gone shortly after that. And then, a couple months ago, became business partners. And now we're about to do the bravest thing in media, which is talk about your success before you've had it.
That's right.
Nobody wants to do that. But I think it's going to be interesting to chronicle this journey. Because it's too easy to talk about it after the fact, like it's a foregone conclusion and everybody at that point wants to kiss your ass, but the thing for me that I think is now I see in my life, like when I've taken these leaps, I always knew it was going to work the whole time, but I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want to jinx it or sound like a cocky asshole, basically. really, I don't know which more, maybe both of those equally. But I always knew when something was the right path. And then after the fact, after it did work out, the one thing I've regretted thus far, whether it's the military stuff or the other companies that I've been involved in and stuff, is like I should have enjoyed it for what it was during it, if that makes sense, instead of
Totally.
just like wanting it to be over so you can like brag about the success, not brag about, but feel you know. And I think that's, you know, you don't want to be complacent, because complacency just makes you do nothing and be apathetic, but you should enjoy the ride. And every time I look back, I've always enjoyed the process more than the whatever milestones.
Yeah, that's the book, the Alchemist. That's like the whole thesis of the book is like enjoying the journey more than like the destination.
Oh, interesting. I don't know that book.
Max.
Every time I say something, you're like, "Oh, that's a book."
Yeah,
I should.
You're like, I should have been an author. I remember talking to Cannon, his cousin, just won the wrestling national championship. We went to watch him. Mm-hmm. So he's worked his whole life to become a national champion wrestler since the age of 4.
Yeah.
And finally reached his goal in front of 20,000 people. And we're talking to him after the match, and he's like, "Yeah, it didn't feel as great as I thought it would feel." Mm-hmm. He's like, "It's more about like the whole process and getting there. But once you reach the top, everyone says it's not what they thought it would be."
No, I mean, that's invariably true. I think anytime you reach a goal, especially if it's a long one that you've like put a lot of thought into, if nothing else, if not effort. But yeah, it's like the whole Christmas morning, you know, the presents are open,
Right.
and it's like, okay. But no, I mean, I am excited for this journey. One, to go into with the perspective we have. Two, it's an awesome idea, and we have an awesome team, but which we can talk about. But yeah, I think it is. That's the part I like the most now, is like getting to, especially with a startup thing, is like getting to be extremely in the weeds on everything.
Yeah.
Like we were getting the fucking insurance, you know, and getting the tax numbers with the states and all that, which is, I hate administrative things more than anything. But
just think about your job description right now, like as a startup founder. Yeah. Like, so we're doing coding, a ton of coding.
Yeah.
You're doing the bulk of it. I'm doing the vibe coding with Claude on
very
the front
successfully
end.
though.
Successfully, it works.
Yeah,
you plug into Claude.
It totally works. I don't care what anybody says.
You drop it back in. There's issues. You say fix it. You don't even look at what the issues are.
Yeah,
it fixes it, and then it works perfectly. Mm-hmm. But so you got part coder, part mechanic. We had a flat tire the other day. You know, negotiating real estate leases.
I couldn't believe when you told me that there wasn't a flat tire on there, by the way. I didn't believe
a spare tire?
Yeah, or a spare tire. I was like, no way. Because, you know, I mean, you didn't know what a snowblower was when I...
Well, I've actually had to figure out the flat tire piece.
Yeah, you're right. I can't believe that there was no spare tire. That's fucking weird. But
so this guy, Scott Adams, I follow, he thinks the whole world's like a simulation. And one of his rationales is, he's like, I've had so many water issues in my life. Like someone's just messing with me. And they're like testing how to fix water issues. He says he has one once a year. And
what is it? What about like
in his
flood
house?
In his house?
Yeah, a flood in his house, something like that. And so my issue is flat tires. I think I've had 8 in the past 3 years. And I Googled it. And
well, it's because you live in Chicago.
Chicago and Michigan, they've got shitty roads. Yeah. But I Googled it and they said, in your lifetime, you should have about 5 flat tires. And I hit that in a year.
Well, again, in Chicago, though. I mean, like Tim that used to work in Chicago, he had a flat tire every other week. And he had that really expensive Mercedes, so each one cost him like $3,000. I was like, you should just rent a car and keep that in a garage. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that is your
That's
simulation.
My test in life.
But it's true. You do. We wear them all. We wear all the hats.
Yeah.
CFO, obviously, and marketer,
marketing.
which has been that's been the biggest eye opener for me. I guess we should just say what this business is, so we don't sound like cryptic.
Sure.
To people that are listening to this. But so, we've started Locavana, which is an e-commerce / logistics platform that is designed to link locally produced food to consumers through an app that's as easy or easier to use than any other e-commerce website like AWS or Etsy or anything like that. But then we perform the logistics piece, which is really the differentiator, to pick up the food and then figure out various channels to get it delivered directly to people. And the whole concept is, the food supply chain in particular is heavily reliant on all these corporations, and there's a ton of preservatives and chemicals and whatever else, imported things from points unknown,
Yep.
that are not good for anybody, whether it's economically or health-wise. And you have a local ecosystem that is ready and willing and able to provide the substantial part of the food supply, but lacks the infrastructure to do it. So I think we have a tremendous idea here. And
I just love how simple it is.
yeah,
like
that's
all
the
we're
thing.
doing is connecting local producers to the local community.
Yeah.
And
it's actually easier in theory. Like I loved the first post ever, the Instagram, which we'll have to make like an NFT from that, was if your apple needs a passport. So we live in Michigan, which is like the apple capital, the maybe not the, I think Washington State is number 1 and Michigan is number 2 in terms of apple production. Yet you can go to the grocery store here and get apples from Chile.
In peak apple season.
In peak apple season, yeah, which is ridiculous. So it's easier to get stuff locally and cheaper and everything else, but
Healthier.
substantially
Tastes better.
healthier.
I mean,
Yeah,
it just makes so much sense.
Better.
But the hard part is, like, it sounds like such an easy idea to connect the local community, local producers, but no one has really been able to do it. There's all these solutions out there that are half-baked, that are, just technology. They make the farmers do all the work. They make the customer do all the work. They're lazy. That's exactly what it is.
So many businesses are lazy now.
And it's hard. It's a hard thing to accomplish. Like, how do you efficiently scale a business that is,
right?
Connecting localities versus
Yeah.
scaling globally, which
Well,
is like
that's
the opposite of what globalization's doing.
You're trying to trigger me now to get me all spun up, so I go on a rant. But like
that's my goal here, actually. That's how you get views.
No, but I am very sick of lazy companies.
Yeah.
Like everybody, and I think it was, there was this point in time when coding was enough of a differentiator, and all you had to do was learn how to code a computer, and so few people could do it. So you could make any website to sell anything. And it was like, now, but we're talking decades ago at this point, which is crazy to think about if you're 40 something and you're like talking about how tech companies are old and outdated now. But it's true. The model of like, I'm just going to do some SaaS bullshit and I'm going to sell it. And because it's a website, everybody's going to use it because it's better than the alternative. That has created this concept that you can just make an app, flip it off to some company. It'll be bought up for a whole bunch of money. It didn't have to add any value. It didn't have to be differentiated. It didn't have to perform any actual function other than linking one person to another.
Yeah. And it's gone in 5 years. It's completely irrelevant in 5 years. It's not built to last.
But that middleman lazy app, that is the revolver of today. Because there's no value to it. It's bullshit.
I mean, most SaaS solutions are just things you can already do in Excel, and they make it so like it's a little bit faster. It's like the long tail of Excel things.
I'll be honest. I mean, that was my dream. Like before, now we might be talking 10 years ago. Like when we were in the in the financial services thing. That was my thing. I was like, oh, I'm going to do an app that's going to do everything. And every time I did it, I was like, this works, but it's actually fucking easier in Excel.
Yeah, and then you can't customize it once you build the app.
Yeah, like it is so hard to Excel, because Excel is simple. You can actually do so much in it. I mean, when it starts to tap out is when it's huge data. Like a couple 100,000 rows in Excel starts to bog down and stuff.
I don't understand how they haven't fixed that. It's always been 7 million rows, right?
Yeah, but even at 7 million rows, it bogs down after a couple 100,000.
Yeah.
So it's really, obviously there's certainly, but then you still have the people that crack that code early, like the Salesforce and the Oracle and the SAP, like, which, by the way, those things are notoriously difficult to use and clunky and require like full-time people just to manage them.
Yep.
Like there really is no good solution. But I think that's like people are chasing that. Like, oh, we're going to come up with now everybody wants to use AI for it.
Yep.
And AI is going to have the same problem. I think that, me, I am on the record now as an AI naysayer. Not that I think
stance.
Well, it's not for probably AI is going to it's going to like turn my refrigerator off and stuff.
But AI robots are going to remember this.
But honestly, I think it is clever. It's a super fast way to crunch data, but it's nothing more than an algorithm that's based on probability. The more impressive part of AI is actually the chips. It's not the algorithms.
Well, it doesn't actually innovate, right? Like the models are based on pre-existing data or synthetic data, but it's not creating anything. So you don't see like new businesses. You don't see new ideas, new like breakthroughs in physics from AI, at least yet. It's just it's doing what we've already done. And like, it's just a big directory with all the information on
so
the
this is true, and I agree with you. And I just got done saying I think AI is. I don't think AI is a flash in the pan. I think it is what it is. It's a fast way to look stuff up, and yes, regurgitate. It's not going to create. It could permutate, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And you can set the temperature and whatnot to create wild and zany responses to shit. But it's not even. I don't think it's going to evolve, but here's the counterpoint that I've thought about. So that's the same thing really that people do. Like if you zoomed out on humanity as one processing unit. So somebody makes a song and then somebody else makes a song that's different, but it's more or less similar enough.
Like that Ed Sheeran video where he plays every song with 4 chords.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and if you look at just at the guitar, which we both know the guitar well, like you can learn 4 or 5 chords and play 90% of the songs that you ever wanted to play.
That's right.
And the differences are they're enough to the human ear to like some people might like one song and not another. But really it's more or less the same. I mean, we're bound by the limits of physics and sound waves anyway. And so why is it that a human could create something new, even though you're just taking inputs? Like you can't have an original thought really, because you're just taking all the inputs that you've experienced in your life and you're mutating those into another version, maybe combining things, which AI could do theoretically. If you wanted it to.
That's really interesting because that guy Palmer Luckey that I was telling you about, he was on the Sean Ryan podcast. He's building that company Anduril. That's the military contractor.
Yeah.
And they're doing all these crazy technologies in the defense space. And he said none of his ideas are original. They're all things that sci-fi people wrote about like 60, 80 years ago.
Right.
And the only difference is now we've got the technology to actually build it. So it's not his original idea. I mean, maybe he came up with it, but then he realizes, oh, other people have already thought of this. So it's not my original idea.
Yeah.
But he's here at a unique point in time where he can actually build it.
Right. So what does make a human different though than AI? I have a theory on this. I think it's...
You're going to say like emotion?
Well, sort of. So I've thought of 3 distinct attributes that will always separate humans from AI, which is crying, lying, and dying. And it's awesome that they rhyme because it makes great.
Be a great article title.
But crying, lying, and dying. So the first thing is like crying. It is a very irrational actual action. And it really doesn't, it does nobody any, it does the one function that I'm sure some anthropologists would say is that when you cry, it alerts your community to the fact that you need help.
Is that the evolutionary reason?
I don't know. I mean, what else would there be? Like, it's a waste of calories, time. If you're, the thing about like what a robot would never cry because it would just analyze the situation for what it is. So it's like somebody dies. Like, what is the reason to cry about it and grieve and feel bad? And it's not even so much what's the reason to cry. So, okay, fine. Evolutionarily, the reason is so that you attract people to come console you. But what's the actual reason to even feel bad about it? It is what it is. Everybody's going to die. What's the point in grieving even? Because that really, I don't know, I can't point to an evolutionary reason for that. Like, it is what it is. It's over, and now you move on. And I don't know. They say some animals, other animals grieve. Bears, I just recently learned. Elephants, dolphins, but definitely not the same way. And like, they don't take off work for it. Not that I'm like saying you shouldn't take off work. It is, we're humans, so you understand that humans grieve. But why? What does it do for you?
I think it's just recognizing that you're never going to see that person again.
I know, but so what?
And that if that person added value into your life,
but now they're not. Yeah. If your car breaks down, you don't grieve. You get a new one.
I was grieving a lot the last couple of weeks.
Unless you get flat tires 8 times in a year.
In a parking garage you can't get out of.
But so that's one. Okay. So let's so the idea is humans grieve. Maybe somebody knows why. I don't. The second one is lying. Now, obviously, there are reasons to lie that you would say, oh, because, you want to leg up or you want to do this or you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. But the reality is, like, you can get AI to lie by telling it to lie, but a computer doesn't actually understand the concept. Like, why it would have to deceive, I guess. It would, like, it doesn't have a motive to do that.
It's funny.
Unless you tell it to.
Did you watch The 3-Body Problem?
No.
It's that book and
another book
show
that I haven't read.
That Jack was telling us to watch.
Yeah, I remember it. I do want to watch it actually, or read it actually. But
there's a scene where they're communicating with this ultra intelligence that's light years away, and they like read it books and they just communicate because it's coming in a certain amount of years. Spoiler alert. But it tells a white lie in one of the stories, and the intelligence like couldn't understand the lie.
Yeah.
It had no concept of lying.
Right.
And that led to like a big dispute between them.
Yeah. Well, and so that's the thing is like a computer. So here's the thing. Here's another thing. I don't know that you could lie to a computer. You could input data that's false.
Mm-hmm.
And the computer will either not have its own data to cross-reference and realize that your data was false, or it will, and then at that point, it'll just take it for granted. So whatever you entered becomes its truth. Or it will have data to cross-check, and at that point, it would just say, there's a misalignment here. But it doesn't, so I think humans, you lie. Obviously, there are reasons to lie. Like, again, you want to trick somebody, steal, do something nefarious, or you want to like save somebody's feelings because you don't like their hat or something. But there's not a good reason that you would like for a computer. I don't think they would deliberately lie. They may have a goal, which requires them to report false data, which again.
Is that not lying? Reporting
it is,
false
but
data?
it would, but you would have to have told the computer to do it. Or again, and this is where people are going to say, no, like computers are going to make their own goals up at some point and then be inspired to disseminate. But so like, even the false information thing, you know, and even the algorithms with fake news and whatnot, like that is actually humans programming computers to do that.
Yeah.
The computer has no motivation to do that, which brings me to my last and most important point, which is the dying part. And I think at the end of the day, if there was to be a war between humans and computers, it would come down to the fact that humans die. They're aware of their death from a very early point in their life, which creates an urgency. You have now an urgency to succeed in whatever goals it is that you decided, to procreate,
Yep.
to prolong your species, to create things that are legacy so that people after you, you know, can enjoy the whatever it is about you that makes you so special. And that's why every human thinks they're fucking God's gift to the world, because you're programmed to, because you only have a very short amount of time in the universal context to do whatever it is, and then you're gone.
Yep.
Now, I don't think that a computer will have a concept of, because first of all, theoretically, a computer could live forever, last forever. You know, might have to change its chips and whatnot, but there's not that sense of ticking time clock for a computer. So they don't have the same motivation to prolong itself, or let alone its community of other computers or AI things or robots or whatever it is. So again, unless they're programmed to do that, and even if, you know, the protagonist would say computers are going to get wise, and then one computer is going to program all the other ones to care about their own mortality. But like it would be easy enough to, it would be easy enough to take away their motivation through, because they're not deep, like we are hardwired.
Yeah.
A human being is hardwired with computing. Forget about the computing power of the brain. It's like the instincts. I know, like Mark Zuckerberg has talked about the soul and believing in the fact that there's a soul, and maybe that's the difference. But I can't see that a computer will have any motivation to prolong itself.
So you're not scared of like the AI taking over and going rogue?
AI is going to take over because people.
I agree.
I don't think that I'm left on its own devices. If everybody was like, you know what, all we want to do is have it make funny pictures and like write my essays for me. No, I don't think it would ever decide to mutate itself into a human killing thing. It doesn't know how to lie inherently. It doesn't grieve, and it doesn't think it's going to die. So it doesn't really care.
Here's the scary scenario is what you said. So like a terrorist group.
That is a different thing, though. That's still humans killing humans. Humans are the threat to humans.
It's going to be the tool, because the scary part is a lot of this stuff is open sourced, and it's going to continue to evolve. And so you really need to get ahead of that.
I think that's true, but I think what's out there now is not that powerful. I mean,
we're in the first inning, though.
I know.
mean, we're 3 years in to this AI race, right? 3 or 4 years in.
I agreed. And you know, there's lots of people that seem smart and work for Google that say like in 5 years, we're going to have general intelligence, but still I'd like to understand what general intelligence means.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the whole thing of like sentience, like, are you sentient? Which, I think that all comes, I think if you were to define, I don't know what the actual definition of it is. I think it just means that you know you're going to die. And if a computer knows it's going to die, which could be either being shut off, smashed with a hammer, having its motherboard fry out, whatever, you know, I don't know. Does it really care?
Yeah, humans care way more about that. I mean,
I would think.
But don't you think legacy is also kind of a weird belief to have? Like a weird thing to care about? Because he's like, you're gone.
Yeah.
So like,
who gives a shit?
Who gives a shit? Did you ever see the Mike Tyson? You watched that fight with Jake Paul?
No, I did not.
So Mike Tyson, when he gets into like fight mode in camp, he turns into a scary person.
Yeah. Who won that anyway?
I think it was thrown, but Jake Paul won.
Really?
Tyson, he looked really bad. He's old.
Well, yeah. What is he?
He's 60.
Jeez.
I mean, he looked good for 60, really good for 60, but I mean, Jake Paul's in the prime.
Yeah.
I think he didn't go as hard as he could have. But there's an interview where, on like the media day, a couple days before the fight, this 13-year-old girl's interviewing Tyson, and I don't even think he noticed her age. And she's like, "Hey, Mike Tyson, what are your thoughts on how this fight's going to be for your legacy?" And he goes on this 1-minute rant where he's like, "Legacy doesn't fucking matter." He's like, "When you die, you're dead. It means nothing." And this 13-year-old girl's like looking up at him. But it's kind of a good point. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I mean, that's true too. I guess it's as irrational as grieving death. But I think it comes back to, like, evolutionarily, you would say it's because you're worried about your species. Like, you're supposed to care about the survival of your species.
Yeah.
Which means setting future generations up to succeed. And if you look at like Musk's whole thing about interplanetary and all this, I mean, he's thinking like millennium from now, what's going to happen to the species, which I don't know. Again, I think it's one of those things you just can't question. It's what a human is.
Yeah.
And it is probably part of that sentience thing. So just knowing you exist does not make you sentient. I think it's like you have to care about the fact that you're going to die and what you're leaving behind and all of that. And again, that's why I don't fear AI. I fear humans using AI to do things, for sure. But I actually don't think it's going to be nefarious either. I think it's going to be...
It's like fearing rocket launchers, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're dangerous, but it's the person who's actually using the tool.
Yeah. AI doesn't kill people. I kill people. But, like, I think the worst thing is going to be...
Happy Gilmore? Is that the guy's shirt?
Yeah. But I think the bigger problem, honestly, is you're going to... Like, you've already got a tremendous portion of the population that is just weak. Just bred weak. Maybe not born, but certainly born into it.
Strong or good times create weak men.
Yeah, well, these are good times, all right. But you have these people that just immerse themselves into playing video games to escape, and everybody's got some reason to be depressed about something and unhappy.
That's a good line of work, therapy, right now. Being a therapist, you probably have
demand. But what's going to happen is now you're going to be able to replace, because previously, I think humans do crave interaction for the most part.
Totally.
If you can effectively recreate the human interaction,
I think it's impossible.
I don't know, man.
I'd be really sad if they were able to crack that.
Well, I don't know. That I think there's a decent chance of that. Because you could sit there and have a conversation with Claude right now. Just ask it whatever. I've even seen a thing, and this was months ago, which is like 40 years ago in AI time, like a thing where they would take your voice and they would have a library of you saying and things, and you can have a conversation with yourself. And people were like freaked out by it. And
I heard it's not that good though.
Oh, really?
Like,
I don't know.
I've heard of people who do that. They put all their podcasts into AI and then they have a conversation with it.
Oh.
And it's like it's an inch deep, right? It just uses all the stereotypical things you would say, but it's not really you.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you do this for free? I want to do it.
Yeah, there's companies that do this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to try that. Well,
you'll have a lot of podcast episodes, so you'll get once you get 100 hours of content.
100 is what you need?
I don't know, but you can plug it in and it should be better. But even with all that, I still think it's not going to be that great.
I don't know if I'd really want to hear myself talk. Everything I say is just in the moment, and then sometimes I look back like, man, that kind of sounded like an asshole. I'd be talking to myself. being like, shit.
You'd be like, I hate this guy.
But there was like that movie with Joaquin Phoenix.
Her.
You know, it was basically that idea. But, which I don't know. I mean, okay, like I feel like that's not impossible in some amount of years. To at least.
You think it's going to be as good as human interaction?
I don't think it has to be as good. I
That's
think
what
I think it has to be good enough for people
match.
that are fucking pathetic and weak.
For the people who are lonely, it'll be better than nothing.
Well, yeah.
I agree with that.
And I think but like, you're supposed to have motivation to go out there and seek people and, you know, make something interesting of yourself so you can be, you know, to have interactions. And now if you can just have this affirmative being just always stroking your ego no matter what, no matter how despicable you are and lazy, and then put on top of that, now here's where it ends. This is the end, is when they make like some sort of robot doll.
Sex doll.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to come, dude. I mean, it's going to come. I don't know how many years, but then it's over.
But think about the progression of that. So, you know, would it be 20 years ago where you actually had to talk to girls out in the wild if you wanted to get a date? Mm. And then that was 10 years ago,
back in my day,
back in your day, when I was in high school, that's how it was. You have to build up the courage.
You had to call their fucking house and talk to their dad.
Out. Yeah. So that took courage.
Yeah, it did.
And a little bit of rejection probably.
Yeah.
And you have to do that in person. Now you just go on an app and you send that message to 100 people and you get, 10 people might respond back.
So that was after my time. Like, you're talking about like Tinder and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was after my time. I can't even imagine that.
But it takes away that urge to like actually go out and do it.
Right.
If you've got a dating app, you don't actually have to talk to people at a bar. You can get dates or out and about. You can get dates through the app. And then once you get this
and then sex
doll.
You just, on that, so they, like, you swipe and they swipe and then all of a sudden they just show up at your door and you have sex? Is that how that works?
Not for me. I met my girlfriend on Hinge. So it's so formulaic. You send a message, you send like 5 messages back and forth.
Yeah.
To realize they're
and so that like the idea of that I think is actually not a bad one. Like the original Match.com thesis, which is like there are certain personality types that, potentially mesh. Again, I don't know if you can really.
It's not personality types though. It's just it's all looks. It's 100% looks on. Like you have 3 prompts where you can write 1 sentence. It's just looks, and then you set up a date after.
So it heavily favors good-looking people then, I would say. So is it even worth doing if you're ugly, or you just find other ugly people?
So I actually think the apps are really good at matching your looks.
Really?
Because they see how many people are liking your page.
Oh, they just do it like that. Because I wonder if is there going to be like a facial recognition thing that can say this person's attractive?
I think they just use the swipes as their metric.
Interesting. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. We have become very anonymous as a society.
Yeah.
And it'll only become more that. And then if you can actually have, even if it doesn't even have to be perfect, because really you already see it. I mean, there's like notoriously low dating rates amongst.
Doesn't Japan have their own government dating app, or is Japan or South Korea?
I think it's Japan.
The birth rate is so low.
Yeah, declining population. Actually, I think most of the developed countries are starting to have declining.
Developed, yeah.
Developed.
Yeah.
Yeah, the developing ones are going apeshit. They don't care. They're having 14 kids apiece still. But that's like, I've even seen this in, like, I remember reading about Ethiopia when I was working in Africa. So Ethiopia became very developed and the birth rate plummeted because that's what happens.
What drives that, you think?
Middle class. So middle class people So you know when you have impoverished people, they first of all they don't have the same access. But one of the biggest reasons probably they don't have access to birth control.
Yeah.
And women typically don't have the same role and power over themselves and stuff in those cultures where it's not developed. So then you establish a middle class. Middle class comes with education across the board. And it also comes with a certain level of gender equality. And it comes with access to health care. And it comes with more than anything, it comes with people that are like, I grew up with like 18 brothers and sisters and it kind of sucked. And now I have like a bunch of money and I don't really want to fucking raise 18 kids. And neither does my wife. And we have enough money to go get birth control. So then they have 2 or 3 kids. And so it is notorious that, developing countries their birth rate will go down. And within a developed economy, the average 2.2 children in the US, that's, most of the middle class having 2.
It's a replacement rate, essentially.
Yeah. And then, but you have the birth rates are higher in impoverished parts of any society. It's just the way it always is.
Yeah. I mean, that's the end of society, right? If that trend continues. Unless, Elon Musk
yeah,
offsets
it might be 2.3 now because of him. No, but I don't know because I don't know. I guess if you really extrapolate that out.
I mean, it's like 5 generations. It goes down by an obscene amount.
Do you mean it's the end of society if birth rates continue to go down?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I thought you meant if there's an inequality between rich and poor having kids. I don't
no.
that. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, obviously, if you can't replace the population, at the same time, the world's population is continuing to explode. So if you look at it from the ethnocentric U.S. view, I think there's a bigger threat there. I mean, we have 350 million, and the rest of the world has the other 7.5 billion.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Eventually, that's got to matter. I don't
think it's a problem you can really solve though, because you don't want to. I don't think you want to pay people to have kids.
No, you don't. That would be a very perverse incentive.
Yeah,
it would not give you the result you're hoping for. I think the bigger thing is try and make the other parts of the world developed.
But isn't that just going to lower the birth rate across the board?
Well, yeah. I mean, 2.2 is enough. We don't need more motherfuckers in this world.
I'm saying, how do you
keep the same 7 billion we got, and we're good.
But how do you keep it at 2.2? Because I think it's rapidly going below that.
Below that?
Yeah.
Well, that's bad. Yeah. What you don't do is make realistic sex dolls that have good personalities that can replace your need to actually go find a date.
It's true.
And I think that's the bigger threat that AI poses than anything is it's going to enable humans to not be humans. I don't think AI becomes a human. I think AI turns humans into not humans.
That's where we're headed with the Neuralink, where you put the chip in your brain.
That's a different story. I did read one book at least that I can talk about. I can't remember the name of it though. I think it was called the Singularity something or other.
Yeah.
You know that book?
I think I've heard of it.
Anyway, I think the guy was talking about, which I thought was interesting, was humans are very good at dynamic things, like for whatever reason. They're good at interpreting, like facial expression, for instance, is one of those things where it's very nuanced. A human is not infallible, but extremely good at reading the facial expressions of another human. But it's horrible at data. Like the human brain is not set up to continue to memorize huge swaths of data and things like that. Computers are the opposite. So computers have the ability to recall data extremely well. And if you combine the two, so if you were to give a human's dynamic brain the same recall ability as a database, now you've got something powerful. That's scary too. Now that we haven't even touched on that. I don't know that I'd call it AI per se. That's more, what do they call it? There's a word for it. But like making a computerized person, I think that could be crazy. Because imagine if you could like put a chip in and be like, I want to learn Beethoven's Sixth.
I hate that because it takes away the fun. Like
Is
the
it
journey
possible though?
that we talked about earlier, where like the whole part about learning guitar is practicing. Like if I just knew how to play every song, it wouldn't be that cool.
Is it possible? Because then you're combining. Now that's one thing because that's physical.
I think it is possible.
I don't know though, because you're literally, your hands are just going to move themselves, and like
the muscle
all
memory,
the neurons and everything in your muscles and your tendons, like it's pretty complex.
But you'll get there fast because you'll know every note and you'll know
potentially.
Exactly
Let's take
a
more realistic example though. Is like you're just going to have every piece of data related. Let's just say you want to do a speech about something, and it's like I want to give a speech on how to do a heart surgery, and I'm not a doctor. Psh, put it in, and now all of a sudden I have every piece of data about how to do heart surgery. That's crazy. I mean, and that seems. I guess though you still have to compute. You still have to process the data.
Yeah.
It would make you a hell of a lot smarter. You wouldn't forget things.
The magic is still, like you said, doing it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our business philosophy and what we're doing versus, how we're ripping the SaaS companies where we're actually the one moving the product, doing something in the physical world.
Yeah.
Like even if you have the knowledge, to your point, like you have to actually do the thing, do the heart surgery.
Yeah.
I don't think you can actually like do the heart surgery right away. Like you have to still practice it.
Yeah, I wouldn't think, but that's what I actually love about AI. So I am not anti-AI. I think it's awesome, and what I love about it is I think it has equalized. I think it's flipped the professional world on its head because you had decades, if not centuries, that were dominated by academic people who were in the service industry. I can't stand the fact that we boast about the fact that the U.S. is a service-based economy, because I think that's like disgusting.
It made my skin crawl when people would say I was in the professional services.
Professional services.
I hate
that means I don't do shit.
Yeah.
I have no risk, and all I do is I'm a prostitute. That
transaction flea.
Yes, it's a transaction flea. I suck blood out of every transaction between two other parties, and I don't have any risk in it. And what I love about AI is that all of that shit, because it's all rote, it's all going to be, like just knowing something anymore doesn't mean shit. And just having a big library of data to, like a big law library, that doesn't mean shit. It's how do you actually, so it's not that we don't need people in services, because you do. I mean, there is value to some amount of people providing services in an economy, but they should be the best ones, and they should also still be the ones working the hardest. And people have just been able to create this moat. If you look about like these big accounting firms, these big audit firms, like they have these regulations where, a public company needs to be audited by one of these big four accounting firms, and they're going to go in there and do this audit and blah, 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 and they're going to sign off on it. Of course, nobody pays attention to the conflict of interest that they're auditing the person that's paying them to audit them. And it's just, there's no actual, like a computer could absolutely do that job. Absolutely do that job. And then it's like they change the fucking GAAP rules every year so that the accountants need to learn new GAAP rules. Yeah, but now GAAP, they could rewrite GAAP tomorrow and AI would understand it in milliseconds.
You see that in consulting, accounting, law, like any change in any of these policies, it just creates more billable work.
Yeah,
for each of these firms.
Numbers haven't
so they're
changed.
Incentivized.
The way to count to 10 has not changed in a long time. So the fact that we have to constantly change accounting rules is...
And the people at these companies that do the work, I was one of them. They're 22 to 25-year-olds at every accounting firm, at every, a lot of the law firms. They're the ones doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Maybe they're a little bit older because they went to law school.
Yeah.
At like McKinsey.
Yeah.
You have 23-year-olds who are doing 90% of the work, and then they give the presentation to their, partner and manager,
right?
And that's who presents it. But like, that's not a, it's not a useful thing when people who have no expertise are actually the ones doing it.
No, and what it comes down to is you have people at companies that are trying to work every day to make their product, and you have farmers out there. I mean, we know this well from dealing with all the people we do that produce food, like countless hours. The people always bitch and moan about investment banking hours. They should see a farmer's hours.
Yeah.
An investment banker would wither away in a week trying to go work on a farm.
What did Jamie say her schedule was in the wintertime when her cattle are
Yeah, she wakes up every couple hours. But, the reality is it is an awesome tool. And I think when it first came out, the analogy I had was like a painter. So like if you just take paint, like if you use the painter analogy, you've got the person who paints the picture and you have the person that makes the paint to sell to the painter. So it was as if, at one point the paint maker had this secret way of making paint. And so they had a ton of leverage, and you could just, here's blue, here's yellow, here's red, and I'm going to sell you blue paint and red paint and yellow paint so that you can paint your picture. And so painters were beholden to paint makers. And all of a sudden, like overnight, painters can make their own paint now. So you don't need the paint maker.
Right.
The person with the actual talent and the actual job doesn't need all these people doing bullshit that they can do themselves now. That's what I love about AI, because now people that want to do work, physically move something or create something or take risk, have a lot of the tools. And again, services are going to be needed. You're going to need still people that can interpret things. You're going to still need people that can do, but even those people.
So here's the thing I don't necessarily love where it's going is, there's the phrase that ideas mean nothing. It's all about execution. Mm-hmm. Like as this stuff gets better and I can just build an app in 2 seconds, it's going to be ideas mean everything and execution means nothing, because the AI is going to just do it all for you once it gets to a certain level. And then I like the execution part.
Well, you still have to execute. Well, you're talking about executing, making the app.
Yeah.
I think it'll be great though. No, because I'd rather it make the fucking app. That is an unnecessary. Well, it's a necessary evil right now.
But it's anything. It's robots too. Like make anything. Like you don't have to actually do it. You just need if the AI and the robots can do everything for you.
I don't know. If
I'm saying like 20 to 30 years, like way out. If they can do everything for you, then the execution is actually not as valuable as it is today.
Well, yeah, that's true. I guess. I mean, if you literally replaced every bit of human work with a robot, I don't know. Then what would we do though? We'd live on we'd be in paradise though. I guess you could say. I think at that point everybody would just become an artist.
Yeah, then it's all about creativity and ideas. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. So it is about the idea. That's interesting.
But at YC Combinator today, they say ideas are worth zero.
Well, you need both. You can't execute something that you didn't think of.
Right.
And if you execute on a bad idea, I don't know that that's a lot of value either.
But like, imagine if we had an intern and they came in and were like, "Hey, I got this idea for Locavana to do this," and then it was like an amazing idea, and then they asked for some like huge, IP in return. Like that'd be ridiculous. I guess that's a bad example because they work for us. But like if they just gave us an idea that they weren't working for us, like it means nothing now because actually executing is the hard part.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean,
today
it would take a lot to replace every human job, though.
Yeah,
really. I mean, I guess it depends how good. I guess they got robots that can do surgeries and things like that, but
Da Vinci's, those things are crazy.
Is that what it is?
It's like the brand that does there's people that are halfway around the world and they're plugged in doing the surgery.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So the robot like moves the way their hands do or something?
Yeah. I think my uncle had I think he had some sort of surgery and he actually had the Da Vinci do the surgery for him.
But it still takes a person to manipulate it?
Yeah, I don't think they program it. Like,
why not?
Like a CNC machine.
I mean, people are worse at that sort of thing than a computer.
Oh,
if
totally.
you're like, I need this to be exactly a millimeter, a computer would be better at that than a human.
It's the same logic with autonomous vehicles, where like if you made those today, there'd be way fewer accidents. But when there are accidents, people will flip out. And so it's like an irrational thing. Like it's better for society, but you have to get way below the current level of mistakes.
Huh. So that was so now you just flipped this whole thing on its head, saying that doing work is actually going to be useless soon. So switching gears from end of the world and making everybody in professional services hate us. What has been the biggest surprise for you in the startup?
In Locavana? Mm-hmm. So just the difference in quality of life interacting with the farmers on a day-to-day basis versus interacting with the lawyers and the consultants and the accountants has been a big difference. I really like going to the farms. I really like talking to all the farmers, getting that perspective on life.
Yep.
That's a surprise I didn't even consider when we started Locavana. But just the day-to-day and having those interactions, like doing all the pickups on Tuesday, seeing how everyone's doing.
Yeah.
That's been the cool part. And I'm excited for, as our platform develops with some of the new concepts that we're working on, I think it's going to be super beneficial for them and it's going to be game changing for their businesses and their lives at some point in the near future. That's going to be the really cool part.
Interesting. The biggest surprise for me has been, I've always, my life has been in B2B businesses.
Yeah.
And so you're selling to a purchasing guy or a plant manager, or, and it's usually, that guy on a first name basis. And if he's mad or doesn't like something or rejects your proposal or whatever, you get feedback. Sometimes you don't want it because he's pissed and he's yelling at you and everything else, but you have it. And I always actually sort of bemoaned that when I was in B2B of like, we're always beholden to like this one purchasing guy. And yeah, I mean, there's obviously there's a weakness there. If the purchasing guy hates you, it's going to inhibit your business. But the thing that I took for granted is that feedback loop in B2B, because the guy by his first name who you're trying to sell something to, and if you don't win, why, usually, whether it's price or some feature or whatever it is. When you're selling to consumers, this is my first time really being in any sort of consumer facing business and building a brand and all that thing. I did not foresee the difficulty in understanding what your customers want, what your end users looking for, because you don't get feedback.
Yeah.
And everybody tries those idiotic surveys, which I don't think anybody ever fills out. I've never filled one out. If you don't like something, you just leave the website.
You hit X.
And you leave it in seconds. Yeah. Like you get the only feedback you get is if you see that people are visiting your website and not buying something, and you see that they didn't buy it and you don't know why. You don't know what they were looking for. Did they end up by accident? Did they not like what it looked like? Is there a glitch, a bug?
We've had a few of those where we didn't even know. And then, someone had the courage. One of our friends had the courage to tell us.
And it's very difficult. And it's gut wrenching. Yeah. Honestly, it's gut wrenching to put something out there and just sort of, I feel like it's more embarrassing. I'm always like, I'm afraid, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
when I put something out, and if there's like a glitch, especially, because that's certainly on me.
Well, there's that.
Or if there's just something somebody doesn't like.
Right. That idea of the minimum viable product that we really focused on.
Totally fucked that up.
I saw a great tweet on this. I don't know if I sent it to you, but like the MVP, the minimum viable product, the idea is like you should be embarrassed with your first product. You should launch as soon as possible.
Mission accomplished.
And we did that. But the guy said MVP doesn't mean your first working product. It's your working product that someone's willing to pay for.
Yeah.
And we were not at that level when we launched.
No, and again, I don't regret it. I wouldn't. And this is why I'm glad we're doing this now, because when we, in 20 years, when we look back on this, it'd be easy to remember different versions of history, but we can remember this. I don't regret sort of launching the way we did or when we did, because I do think, and I think there's a lot to this. Like, you can't foresee all the problems you're going to have. There's so many. That's the other thing in a business to business sale. The parameters are well defined usually. Yeah. When you're selling it with specs, and you're selling it a product that everybody's well aware of what it is. And so you can foresee, some of the potential problems. Whereas when you start to get involved with the masses, there's tens of thousands of people that have already visited the website, and each one's got a different scenario. They clicked through in a different way. They purchased things in a different way.
Yeah.
They clicked the back button, there's just too many permutations of what could happen when you start to have hundreds of thousands of users visiting a particular thing and interacting with it, that if you don't start somewhere, you'll just never start.
Yeah, I think you can just limit kind of your growth trajectory until you get to the point where you feel comfortable. So like spending a ton on ads a week after we launched would have been really dumb.
Yes,
but
which
like
we did,
once
unfortunately.
Yeah, luckily we didn't do that. But waiting to spend on ads until you get to the point where you feel good about the product, that's probably the right approach.
And the other thing I also took for granted, again, it is what it is. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. I thought I was a lot more stylish than I am.
I thought that too, and then Ben came in.
Yeah, then we hired Ben, and but even if you think back to the original version, it was more. And again, it was sort of more. I think I was mimicking more the style of like a DoorDash, like cartoony icons, but it was goofy looking, and it was really, really not. Now, we never launched that version because you got a hold of it before we did, but
the bar is high in consumer. The bar is really fucking high for someone to open up their wallet and buy from you. And especially
I don't even know if
food.
It's their wallet. It's more like they don't want to spend any time on you.
Yeah.
There's too many potential things to do on the internet. People are extremely choosy about where they spend their internet time.
And I think food too, like there needs to be a certain level of trust if you're buying food for your family.
Yeah.
Where, we talked about with our Instagram when we had 40 followers, it's kind of hard for someone to say, yeah, I'm going to buy the thing that's feeding my family from this company.
Which is such a double standard, because you will gladly go to the grocery store and buy a piece of meat that you have no idea that it was actually imported from China.
Distributed in the U.S.
In the U.S.
Not manufactured or
didn't
grown
have to meet the same USDA standards.
Right.
You don't know anything about it. But that is the power of the brand, because the grocery store chain has a brand where they can sell you garbage and you just assume it's fine. Whereas if you buy it from your neighbor, if you go to the farmer's market, you're happy to do it. But if you then all of a sudden, as soon as it's online, you have the same bar to overcome. You have to make the quality apparent. You have to make it visually appealing. You have to make it
fast.
Fast is super fast.
Friction is huge on e-commerce.
Yeah.
Like you need as little friction as possible, because like one additional web page that they have to click through, one additional form they have to fill out.
One more checkbox.
You're losing customers every single time you have any
And
friction.
I even remember it has made me introspective about myself as a consumer, because I use myself as like a proxy for what I would think other people would do. And I was looking at this, and I don't know the brand. I would say it as a service to them.
No free ads.
But there was some like biodegradable plastic bag ad that I saw on Instagram. And I clicked on it, which I very rarely click on any sort of ad just because I don't. But I did on this one because I was like, oh, if they've really made a biodegradable plastic bag, I would buy them because I don't like plastic bags. And I remember that they had me all the way through, and I actually clicked through a lot more screens than I would have. Like, I actually put the effort into trying to buy this product, which is rare, and they had a pretty bad overall process. But they never, I was looking for one thing, which was one fact of why are they actually biodegradable? Because I know that there's a lot of, like, it's been a long time. They've had plastic bags that will break down into smaller pieces of plastic, and they're not biodegradable. You couldn't, like, put them in your garden and, I mean, you can put them in your garden, but they're not actually becoming soil. They're just becoming plastic in your garden that you can't see. And so I just wanted to make sure that these were not that, because those are old, and I'm like, oh, maybe they came up with some. Actually, I'm sort of surprised that nobody's done this yet, some sort of plant-based something or other, but they had no fact about whether these things actually were biodegradable. And so I didn't buy. I was all the way to checkout.
I remember we updated our website the next day.
Yeah.
We came up with that example because we didn't explicitly say, like, what makes us different? What are we actually doing?
How are we doing it?
And how are we doing it? Exactly.
Like, nobody's going to be, they're going to be like, oh, you just, so you mail me food like everybody else. Like, no, we actually own our own trucks. We go, we pick it up. It's refrigerated and temperature controlled the entire time for food safety, which is surprisingly not actually required by any sort of governing regulatory body, but you shouldn't be transporting meat and things like that in a non-temperature controlled truck. And so we have those, and we drop them off to your doorstep directly from people who you can see and know.
There's times where I've gone to pick up lettuce, and the farmer is coming from the field with the lettuce to give me. Like, it is that fresh.
Yeah. And yeah, we did update the website the next day because I was like, I bet people have the same question.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so it's local food. Like, how do you get it to me?
I think you sort of need to spoon feed people who have never seen your website, especially ours is sort of a novel concept.
Yeah.
You really need to explain what you're doing simply. Whereas I think I just assumed that people would get it right away. And when I went to the farmers markets, as like a test to introduce our product, I was surprised at how much I had to explain it to them because I just assumed that they would get it in a second.
Yeah, I think that's easy to do when you're inside of it.
Yeah.
You know it, so you take for granted that everybody else knows what you know. But it is so critical, and that's where I have definitely, because of you and because of Ben, I have understood, or now I understand better, the power of the brand and the necessity of a brand, which is it's your reputation.
Right.
And, in the business to business world, you have a brand, but that it's such a small circle, cause you're in your industry, you go to like an industry show, and by the end of it, you know everybody, but now you're trying to appeal to millions of anonymous people, and they have no idea who you are. And I think we're all basically like we're like deer on a prairie. We're just waiting for the tiger to come out and eat us. Like, everybody's so skittish of being screwed and scammed and, sold garbage. So everybody's, and rightfully so. I mean, everybody's got their defenses up. But as soon as you're known as like, okay, these guys they're not trying to screw me, and they sell legitimate product, and they have this. I mean, it's very important, but it's so much harder to do than I thought it would be.
That's one of the things I think we need to get better at is putting our faces on the social media. I know you and I are not the biggest media people. If you go to our Instagram pages, I think we've got exactly 0 posts of ourselves. but you want to know who you're buying from.
Yeah.
Like,
It's true.
I get all my, I'm probably going to sound like a douche, but all my protein supplements from a guy that is
Cool, bro.
all over his social media is him. His name's Nick Bear. I know he shows how he makes the products.
Yeah.
He uses the products. He's pretty ripped, so it's working on him. But I think like seeing the face of the company and who's actually making it, you're like, that's a real person.
I think it matters a lot.
That matters a lot more today. And social media makes it super cheap and easy to do that.
Yeah. Social media is another one for me because I have not had, I had Facebook for like 4 months when me and Lauren just got married, we got it just so that our family could see pictures. And then we got rid of it. And I haven't had social media. I had LinkedIn until recently when I got hacked,
LinkedIn is the absolute worst.
LinkedIn is garbage. I stopped using it when, I don't know, it just became like this big thing where people would like rant about political bullshit.
Yeah.
And I had, it's like.
Or fake stories about their
yeah.
kids.
And then you just get a million of those in-mails just like people in China trying to sell you something. It is absolutely, to me, it's the worst platform. So what's next?
With Locavana?
Yeah.
I really think for us to consider it success, I want it to be built to last, long lasting, and have real impact. Actually move the needle, solve the problem.
Well, and that was one of the things that you talked about early on was not making a company just to sell it.
Yeah.
Like the idea is not to sell it.
I despise that worldview where you just build a company, sell it to Microsoft, and your technology gets evaporated into thin air.
Well, and again, I don't even consider, this isn't a tech company. It's a logistics company.
Right.
With tech enablement, which every company needs to have some sort of technology aspect to it now, but it's real infrastructure. And what we're building and the new stuff that's coming out, which obviously we're not going to disclose yet, but the new infrastructure that is coming out, that is durable, long lasting.
Yeah. Hardware.
Yeah. It's a physical asset. I mean, it's literally a physical asset, and it is the type of thing that you really aren't going to be able to, it's going to become the same sort of fabric. And again, if you look at like an AWS, a tech company per se, but really they have an infrastructure. They have the warehouses, they have the trucks and that sort of thing. So
it's kind of like Tesla with the cars and the, what do you call it? The charging stations and the batteries at the houses.
Right.
I think we want to build an infrastructure where we've got this Amazon-like supply chain where you can get local products fast, convenient, and fresh.
Yeah, and it is amazing. You want to talk about just like the laziness of the average person now. That's not a blast on any person. That's all of us, myself, everybody. I mean, we've become so accustomed to convenience that you need logistics more so to help you buy things from your own town than you do to buy them from China or something.
Yeah. But we need to be, for us to have real impact, I think we need to be nationwide. And we need to be offering a better product than the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And that's in convenience and in terms of the quality. And I think the quality is where we actually have impact. So if you think about how do you make a real impact today on society, like our health is degrading faster than it really should.
That's one of the craziest things too. We haven't even talked about the fact that in addition to producing less children, we're also dying faster.
Yeah, which
in
is
America.
Crazy
Sad.
To think about.
Yeah.
And I think it's really all tied to, and this is just a theory, but I think it's really tied to overeating. That's like the biggest problem today. Like you overeat, you get obese, you're more likely to get diabetes, you're more likely to get all these diseases. And so what causes overeating? My theory is it's eating processed foods. Like when I eat chips, when I eat bread, like croissants.
I don't know that that's your theory. I think that's a fact.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty well-established fact.
I guess I'm covering my bases too much here. I'll come out and say it.
Just take a stand.
Take a stance. But if you, like in the wild, animals are eating whole foods.
Yeah.
And it is really hard to overeat whole foods. Like if I eat a steak
Let's be clear. We're talking about complete foods, not the fucking grocery store.
Yeah.
Animals don't go to Whole
lowercase Whole Foods. Lowercase. It pisses me off on X. Every time I type Whole Foods, it capitalizes it. So I put the stars on the O.
That's funny. You have to do it like it's a curse word.
Like it's a curse word. Seriously. No free ads for them. But like if you eat, I've got the belief that if you eat steak, chicken, fish, fruits, vegetables, it is really hard to overeat.
Yeah.
So what we're providing from these local companies is making whole foods way easier to get.
Yeah. And they're
potentially cheaper.
Yeah. They're more delicious, just as convenient, cheaper ultimately. Like processed foods, it's hidden that, the cost of them is hidden. And I don't mean like I'm not like, oh, you're going to have to spend more on medicine. I mean, literally, if you go to McDonald's or if you make meals at home with stuff you buy at the farmer's market, I think the farmer's market has this misinterpreted concept that goes, oh, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
It's really not. And this isn't like a pitch. This is just factual. I mean, we've done the analytics. You can eat cheaper buying local food. Now, yes, can you go to the grocery store and buy like a 5-pound thing of chicken for like $1.19? Occasionally, yeah. And that's its own thing. If you want to eat 5 pounds of chicken, you can't ship 5 pounds of sand for $1.19. So how the hell did they get 5 pounds of chicken to the grocery store from the farm and they're selling it for $1.19? That's a little bit sus, I think, is the word of the day, the word of our times. But you can eat very good, delicious, quality food that's as easy to get and as easy to prepare and everything for cheaper.
Yeah. And so right now we're attacking the outside of the grocery store, the fruits, vegetables, the meats, the whole foods. I think there's an opportunity, or I guess we think there's an opportunity to replace the inside of the grocery store as well, where we can make better processed options that are a lot more healthy than
prepared meals, that sort of thing,
and what's currently out there with good ingredients and so on.
Yeah.
But this whole Maha movement, I think, is coming at the perfect time for us, and we didn't even consider it.
No, we didn't at all.
When we started.
But it's, again, I mean, I think I think that movement started and we came up with this concept for the same reason.
Yeah.
Because you do it, and we should like really dissect this concept of like the fact that Americans, we are the only developed nation whose life expectancy is going down, which is, I mean, that's crazy. And nobody should accept it. And it is, I mean, this is where I'm going to start to, again, in a measured way, try to voice an opinion here. But I think that my biggest thing, my whole fundamental concept with Locavana, but with anything, is I don't like being treated like I'm like an idiot. And I think that's one of the things that is too prevalent now when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry.
Yeah.
Like we've seen this, and now we're in it, so you see it more. But like the people funding studies about foods are the people selling the food.
Exactly.
So it's like, oh, is red dye really bad for you? Well, here's a study that says it's not. Made by the fucking dye industry.
That just happened. There's a article, and I think it's the Atlantic, where they were saying that the seed oil craze is nonsense. That people, are freaking out about seed oils is unfounded, and they had these doctor quotes.
Yeah, from some university.
And then the guy looked up the doctor, and she was on the board of the soy.
We should
corporation in the United
pull that
States.
up because I want to cite the fact of this one. Because and I remember that the X post that you commented on, because whoever it was like, it shouldn't be this easy.
It's gross. It's honestly gross.
But people think everybody's an idiot. And the fact is, people affirm the fact that they're idiots by continuing to turn a blind eye to the fact that the seed oil industry is funding the studies about whether seed oil is good or bad for you.
As I'm pulling this up, fluoride's another example. Like what they put fluoride in our water supply to protect us.
What is it supposed to be? Your teeth, or is
I
it
think it's
something
your
else?
teeth, and there's studies that's lowering people's IQs, and it's like
They might be right.
let me work
actually.
on my teeth. I can use toothpaste. Like, don't make those decisions for me.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's exactly right. And you
Here
know,
it is.
okay, I want to hear this.
So AP News, the headline is Kennedy and influencers bash seed oils, baffling nutrition scientists. The quote is, I don't know where it came from that seed oils are bad, said Martha Belluri, an Ohio State food science professor.
There you go.
And then he looks her up and says selected grants, PI, United States Soybean Board, and the Soybean Nutrition Institute. And then the account Twice Baked 8 says, LOL, come on, it cannot be this easy.
Yeah. So you have the soybean industry funding the study on soybean oil. And then the person that gets the grant is the one that says it's not true. I mean,
that's the beauty of X, though. It's like now there's
I
people that can call them out.
like that, but the problem is it doesn't actually change. And this is the thing. And this is where I think it comes to action versus opinion. Because one of the things that I say is, you know, there's opinion. I don't think there is such a thing as an opinion. If all you're willing to do about something is talk about it, then you have no opinion. Certainly not one that I give a shit about. So I think just complaining about things and all that, like, that's not helpful. What is helpful is create a piece of infrastructure, a business that actually helps combat whatever it is that you do have an opinion on. So like, that's what we try and do, is just provide a platform that empowers real and local people. And again, local can be defined in lots of ways. I mean, you're not, like we've talked about, you're not going to get local swordfish in Michigan, but if it's caught by a guy in North Carolina and sold in Michigan, I mean, that's local. If it's caught in China and then sent to Indonesia to get processed and put dye on it so it looks nicer and then shipped to America, that's not local.
Yeah.
So
fresh and directly sourced. If you can get something fast and directly sourced, then I think that's what you want.
Yeah. But then, you know, like it bothers me that we still, it's obvious that all of these things are conflicts of interest. And you have these big institutional people, whether it's through lobbying, funding grants for somebody to put a quote out in publication, whatever it is. And yet it's not really going to change until people stop being lazy. Maybe it's the fluoride making everybody stupid. But like that's the thing, is you've got to, you know, and just somewhat unrelated, but very related. It's like every senator trading stocks. Totally. It's like, man, they're blind trust. They've got some really good money managers that just time those things perfectly. But we all know it. I mean, it's so, at the first couple times it came out, it was like scandalous. Now it's just what they do, but nothing changes.
I mean, you see the senators and congressmen who are funded by pharma and funded by these defense contractors, and they're the ones that are backing going to war, backing these regulations to force certain, you know, pharma products.
Yeah.
Like total conflicts of interest across the board.
Yeah. But here we are. But yeah, I mean, so I think the best thing you can do is just create this platform where people can make their own choices, but have choices to make.
Yeah.
You know, because I think the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, those are two they've gotten. And we've talked about this. I don't, maybe I'll give the benefit of the doubt. I don't think it started with evil intentions, you know, because there was a time less than 100 years ago in this country where the vast majority of people were hungry.
Yeah.
Which is very difficult to think, you know, to really conceptualize today when everybody's just full all the time. But the government had to do something about it. And so they they created these various farming incentives, and they, you know, it's like, well, corn's cheap, just grow the shit out of it and make everything out of it. Make sugar out of it, make everything out of corn, you know, and make, you know, just grain, process the hell out of it so it stretches it and fills everybody up, because at that point there was an urgency to like, we just need people to not be starving.
Yeah.
And then there was kind of, the industrial revolution came to a close, and then you had the consolidation era in the 60s, 70s, 80s, where these conglomerates started to form, and they were like, then they become focused on the bottom line, and that's where you start to have issues.
Yeah, I don't think it's evil. I think it's incentives. So like think about these news companies, right? They're funded by ads. Mm-hmm. And if I'm a pharmaceutical drug company, which a lot of them pay for these ads, that has influence on these companies. Mm-hmm. So if I'm working at the news company, I'm not going to do a news story against the person who's paying for my program.
Right.
And I don't think that's an evil person, but it influences kind of what stories are shown and based on those incentives.
No, that's true. That's true. We should make it very clear. We've received no grants. We have no publicly traded interests, and we have no sponsors that are funding our message.
That's right.
This is pure.
So let me ask you this. So you've got a lot in your life right now. You run a manufacturing company. You run a startup. You do gigs at the local. So this is what I'm impressed with. I think this is why you and I get along really well, is like a lot of people I know just don't have any hobbies. And they kind of just sit in their, normie life.
Really?
And they just don't really have hobbies. They do
I love hobbies.
This is a great life, but a lot of people it's just like, I go to work.
Yeah.
I got my white picket fence. And I just kind of go through life like that. But I feel like you're the exact opposite, where you are out. You don't have to build this company with me. You've got other gigs.
Yeah.
You don't have to, play guitar in front of people when you just learned a couple of years ago. Like that's a big risk.
Yeah.
So I guess do you think that you're just born differently and having that curiosity?
I don't know if because I don't know how anybody else was born.
Yeah.
So I can't say. Again, we've sort of. I mean, that's the title of this whole podcast is the Fear Not. I've always been afraid of being afraid. And so I've always wanted to confront fear.
Yeah.
And again, I started with the military thing, which again, that was very circumstantial, and that was 9/11 driven. And but I was what, 20 years old or something like that when 9/11 happened, and I was just like, well, who are they looking for right now? Like 20-year-old guys that like to work out. So I kind of, for me, I was like, well, I'm not going to not do it.
There's like a fear of not answering the call.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's, and because then I just served with a bunch of people that had the same reaction. I just took for granted that was a reaction. Again, it's not the only reaction. I don't think somebody didn't join the military, that's bad.
Right.
It's different ways, and you can serve society in so many different ways. But for me, I was not like a military bound person. Didn't really have it wasn't like a thing in my, like a lot of people are like, oh, my grandfather was in World War II and my uncle was in Vietnam. Like I think my grandfathers were in World War II, but it wasn't. Actually, one turns out was in what was it? The Ardennes, like during some crazy shit, but nobody knew about it. So growing up, I didn't know that until I was out of the military. I don't think anybody did. And they were like looking through his stuff and they found all these awards and shit that he got, which is weird. But so it wasn't like, there was no motivation for me to go into the military because of like, that's what the Marandinos do.
Yeah.
But it was just the way the world at the time with the 9/11 and all that. And then I definitely was, I called my dad the day of 9/11. I was like, I'm joining the Army, and didn't know anything about it really. And then did a little research. I said the Army because that's what I just knew. Yeah. Right? everybody thinks of the military as the Army. And then, did some research, and I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it all the way. So I researched the SEAL thing and ended up joining the SEAL team, which again was, I was more afraid of what I would think if I didn't do it.
So here's the thing that blows my mind, because I'm one of those sort of SEAL fanboys from afar. Like, I read all the SEAL books, and what I didn't understand until I met you was if you fail out of buds, you're on a ship for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Is that fair? So that is
I don't know if it's fair, but it's true.
Is that
yes,
that is
it's true,
huge risk. Because like you have what, a 25-30% chance of making it?
Something like that.
Yeah. And if you fail, you're going to be on a ship. Like, the difference between being, the greatest warrior of today versus, and
I mean, people that go on ships are very cool too.
Yeah, it's cool,
but it's just a different thing.
It's totally different than what you're signing up for.
No, that's true.
And so like that is a huge risk. So there's got to be some fear in that.
That's definitely a big motivator, I'd say, for most people, because they don't want it. They wanted to do this path, and they don't want a different one. So there's definitely that. But yeah, I mean, again, I when you're immersed in that, I look back at that period of time. I was in for 8 years. Again, it was like they were much tougher people than myself, much more accomplished SEALs than myself, much everythinger than me. Like, I was good at my job, and I loved it, and I was a good teammate, but you're never the best at anything.
Yeah.
At least I wasn't. But I got to meet some awesome dudes. But when I look back at that time, it was, for me, not a blur. Everything's a blur when you look back on it, but I sort of didn't, you don't reflect on it, because first of all, you're a dumb male in your 20s. That's just, dumb. So you don't think about life, which you're not supposed to. You're kind of on autopilot. You're just like,
that's a feature.
Looking for chicks. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Well, and plus I think part of it's the age too. You're just like
invincible,
doing whatever. Yeah, you don't think about it. You're just like looking for chicks and working out and, trying to figure it out. But then you get, more into your decades after that, and you start to look at it. You didn't think about fear at the time.
Like in combat, there was little fear.
Not the way that you thought it was going to be. It's like I think there was a couple big learning points for me in that period of time. One was there's a lot of disillusionment. One was like what we were talking about before. So like passing Hell Week, which is supposed to be, like you're not that you're done, you're far from done, but your odds of making it go, it's the big milestone. Like, I remember the letdown of crawling over the sand dune and seeing the CO was holding like this American flag, which signifies the end of Hell Week. And it's that moment. It's like what you were talking about, the wrestler and all that. Like, it's the moment, like, oh, I finally, and it was just okay, like that's it. I'm pretty hungry and I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah.
But there was no there was no excitement whatsoever in it. And then, like, there was this disillusionment with the accomplishment, but at the same time, there was like much more fulfillment than I expected, and the fulfillment all came from other people. It came from being on the team now. Mm-hmm. It came from working with people that were awesome and better than you, and being part of that, and being just being part of that was way more fulfilling. But then, like, in terms of fear, so like the most physical fear I can remember, which is very normal, I think, is when you're jumping out of a plane for the first time. Like, that's pretty frightening
in training or in combat?
No, in training.
In training.
Yeah. Just the act of jumping out of a plane is frightening. Because when you think about fear, I think, and even like with the Hell Week thing, right? So the thing is like, oh, did you ever think you were going to quit? And I didn't. And I sort of expected to. I kept waiting to to feel like I wanted to quit. I kept waiting to feel fear. The jumping out of the plane thing, it was actually kind of minimal, but it's like you don't want to. It's like not a natural thing. And then once you do it once, after that, you're like, I want to do that 100 times.
That's probably a lot of things in life where you're initially fearful and then
I think,
do it.
Yeah, that's what so the first, I do remember like the first time I went on a mission, like there's a level of like, I don't know what you call it. Like you're thinking about it. You're amped, right? And I just remember like walking up onto the target and I kept thinking like, I'm waiting for this like adrenaline rush to kick in, and it never did. And like even the first time like I heard shots, and like I remember getting down and I was like, when is this fucking adrenaline? Like when am I gonna feel like some sort of thing? And I didn't. And then I realized like that's just a so now there's not a fear like that you would think, at least not, it's not like it's some sort of other, you're never like outside your mind.
But you talked about this when you explained the fear concept to me, right?
Yeah.
And to conquer some of these things, you really need to prepare.
That's right? A lot of it.
And I think a lot of that, not feeling the fears, you've done it a million times.
Well, that's true, because the training is incredible.
Yeah.
You do nothing but train. So you've heard gunshots zillions of times. You've done all these drills. You have studied the mission. You know more or less, not you don't know all the contingencies because it's the nature of things, but you know a lot of it, and you know what you do in a situation, where and how to communicate. So yeah, I think the preparation is a big part of it. I felt more fear. The most fear I've ever felt in my life, though, had nothing to do with the military. I got out of the military, and when I got out of the military, I wanted to start like a business consulting in Africa, because one of my last deployments in the military was to West Africa. And I thought I could add some value there because it's a very difficult place to operate. And so I had a friend from college who had he worked at a conveyor belt company. And I was going to go pitch to them to work with me on a waste energy project. And I was 30 at the time. And in the military, 30 is middle-aged or old. I don't know. I must have been more like 30, 32 probably. I was 32, which is pretty old in the military. Definitely middle-aged. But in the business world, you're like a puppy. And I was never so afraid going into that pitch. And all I was actually pitching them was to sell me something. I was like asking them to be a customer. Mm-hmm. I had all the power and the leverage. But it was the first time, like I had given briefs to, high-ranking people and done mission planning with high-ranking people and stood up in front of the platoon to brief my portion because I was like a communications guy. So I always had to brief the comms plan and stuff. So it wasn't like just talking in front of people, but it was just the first time I was like on my own.
Yeah.
And probably also quite unprepared in hindsight. But for whatever reason, like that, I can remember that as the most like fear. Again, like not fear of like I'm going to die, but fear just in like physically feeling like, fuck, I can't get my heart to stop beating.
Yeah.
That was the time. I was pitching a fucking conveyor belt company to sell me a conveyor belt for a project when I was 32 years old. And that, it is kind of weird, but I think I think that speaks to a lot of things on the question of fear, because there is the fear of like when something horrible, like when something life-threatening happens, there's a certain response. And I don't know that I'd call that fear as much as like, then there's like adrenaline things that happen and chemicals that get released into the body to make you act and stuff. But I don't know that I would call it fear. The thing that I think is fear is like the fear of doing something. Mm-hmm. And that's the fear knot, right? That's the whole concept of like you get tied in a knot because you don't want to do something. And I think there's more fear in like getting something started.
Totally.
Than there is in like, going into a, like if I was like, I'm going to give you a gun and you can just go into a shootout right now. You'd be more afraid going to it than actually once you started shooting, you'd just be either dead or shooting somebody. But like,
probably end up dead.
I think it's like the walk there. If I was like, it's a block away.
Oh, it's like the skydiving. I bet you the plane ride up is way scarier.
It sucks.
After 2 seconds.
It's horrible. And as soon as you're out of the plane, it's a blast. And then it's after that, you want to do it a million times. And then that is one of the things they say about skydiving. One of my favorite takeaway lines was it should be 51% fear and 49% fun. Because again, like especially with something like that, if it's too much fun, you get focused. Complacent, and you lose the edge that keeps you alive.
So what you just said, it makes me think like all the times I've been really nervous in life for certain things, it's when it's something really new that I've never done. Mm-hmm. So like there's been hard things where it's just like the first time I did it, I was really nervous. Then you do it a few times and you get reps, and then not being prepared. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about your music gig. Like if you went up there and had never played guitar, that would be frightening.
It was frightening anyway the first time.
But it's the first time.
And let's make it clear, I'm not
thing.
playing Giant Stadium here.
Yeah, but
I played in front of people, and I sort of did that. One, I like music, and that's. But for me, I do think that there is the exercise of continuing to challenge yourself, and this goes to your question about like why do I do hobbies and why do I do these things. I have this insane curiosity about what I haven't done.
Yeah.
I don't know why, again, but if I haven't done something, it just intrigues the hell out of me until I do it, and I can't not do it. And so, like with the guitar, that I've played like I was in high school in the band, but like I've never played an instrument by myself in front of people, and that was pretty nerve-wracking. I was well prepared for it, but it was still I couldn't look at the audience. Like I played and I was like, I can't see if.
Were you staring at your hands?
I don't know what I was looking at, but I didn't look at a single person. It's a good question. I don't know what I was actually looking at, but yeah, then you do that and you're like, man, I want to do that a million times.
I bet you the next time it felt way more comfortable too.
Oh yeah. Now I wish I could play Giant Stadium. Like I want to.
Right.
And then, like I think there's going to be, I do think that's important though, in terms of building like mental resilience, is you have to put yourself in a position to feel like the discomfort. And it does. There's no doubt in my mind. I have no science to back this up besides myself, but like the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the better you get at dealing with that fear, dealing with that discomfort, being resilient in the moment too. Because what you're thinking about the whole time leading up to it is like the moment. What's going to happen? What am I, how am I going to do? How am I going to be? How am I going to deal with it? And like, am I going to choke? Am I going to forget the words? Like, am I going to whatever? Am I going to whatever? And once you realize in the moment, it's really no different than right now.
Yeah.
You start to realize that you have control the entire time. Not being prepared is a good reason to be afraid, and probably means you should have prepared or you should not do what you're going to do. But like I screwed up while I was playing. I just kept going. Right. It doesn't matter. But I think that's a critical thing. And so I do think even with running the business, like the manufacturing businesses, is I remember, the worst times you wake up is when you know you're going to have to go do, you have to, especially as the CEO, I mean, your job is to deal with all the bad things every day. So the worst ones are when there's like an unwinnable situation. You have either a customer who wants something that's not possible, and then you have the salespeople that want that customer to be made happy, and they want operations to do this, but operations can't or won't do that. And you have like this triangle of people that are all upset, and you have to go into the situation. And a lot of time, I think it's more common than you would think for people in leadership roles to shy away from those moments and sort of be, and like to convince themselves like, oh, they'll figure it out, or, you know, whatever, pass the buck or whatever it may be. And I think that was one of the things that I did really well, was just show up for the hard stuff. And I saw a CEO talk one time, and I thought it was interesting. He said, like, I make 2 or 3 important decisions a year. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true when you're at the leadership level, you know, when you're at the higher leadership level of any organization, is like, you really, your value comes in like these few but huge moments, huge decisions that were tipping points, and you have to show up for those. And
but you have to be prepared for those, to have
absolutely, you
all
have
the
to live
information on hand,
and you have to live it. Like,
Yeah.
you have to live that company. It has to be your obsession night and day. The first thing you think about when you wake up, and the last thing you think about when you go to sleep, and everything in between.
Yeah.
Like, you need to, that's when, because when you can just talk to every aspect of the business, even in those uncomfortable situations, it's still uncomfortable, but at least you're armed with the right, you know, the data and all that. So you can make those decisions. And sometimes you don't have time to ponder them. You know, you have to make decisions quickly, and you have to do it. But like, making no decision is the worst thing you can do. And it's not uncommon, because it feels better than actually, this goes back to the type 1, type 2 thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, which I love. And that was my favorite thing learning in statistics, was type 1, meaning you do the wrong thing. Type 2, meaning you didn't do the right thing. And everybody is afraid to make type 1 errors because they're visible. You do the wrong thing, everybody knows it, and you look stupid. If you don't do the right thing, maybe nobody notices it. Maybe you can figure out ways to justify it. Oh, if this and that and the other thing, because you didn't make any action, so nobody can say you made the wrong action. But in reality, type 2 errors, which is apathy, basically, and fear, that will destroy anything. Nothing, no organization, no living creature, nothing thrives with inaction.
Yeah.
Everything requires action.
And that's one of the big issues in the corporate world, is everyone's in self-preservation mode.
Absolutely.
So they don't take any risks. And a lot of companies, there's not a culture where it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think that's super important, where there needs to be the ability to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And, you know, then you can course correct super fast.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, mistakes are like they're like the reps on your bicep.
Yeah.
Like, when and I've talked about this with mental resilience too. Like, when you work out, you're actually tearing your muscle. That's what's happening. You're actually hurting. You're actually injuring your muscle, and then they grow back with more, filling in those cracks that you made in them, which is the same thing that happens in your mind when you put yourself in those uncomfortable situations. Is like, you stretched your mind, and then I think it like replenishes itself with additional knowledge and additional experience and additional resilience. And who knows, there might be neurons and synapses and whatever else that actually get built. I wouldn't be surprised, because it definitely makes a difference to deal with future fear situations by making yourself consistently in a fear situation. Again, it doesn't mean jumping out of a plane or getting in a shootout. It could be playing a guitar. It could be public speaking. It could be anything you don't like doing. But yeah, I think there's no doubt that those reps matter, and in a company, allowing the team to go and screw something up, properly documented and learned from and so forth. It is what builds the muscle. It is what makes a company extremely strong. But when things get so big, when the corporations get so big and everybody's just worried about not making a mistake, that is just one apathetic blob of corporate bullshit.
Which is quite common.
Yeah.
So sure. One of the unique things about working with you, like initially when you hired me, was I was stunned at how much rope you gave me. And that was before we had worked together. So we, had interviews, but I remember like, hey, write this investment memo for this company on like my first day, and I knew nothing about it. And I'm like, oh shit.
I probably didn't either.
But like, how do you balance? So we hire Ben, right? How do you balance, like, the guy's talented, let's give him a lot of rope, but then also you probably want to give a little bit of guidance and not
you definitely
the micromanaging
need to,
versus the decentralization. Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah.
And how does that evolve over time?
No, that's interesting. That whole decentralization, like I didn't realize that in the SEAL teams I was even in a decentralized leadership. Like it was what it was, and you were given a task with, and maybe not a lot of guidance, but a goal, and you were expected to do it, and that was ingrained in you from the early days. I mean, you're told you show up with a notepad, and you better not ever not have a notepad in your hand, and somebody's going to tell you to go do something, and you're not going to ask them how or why or where. You're just going to go do it or figure out how to do it, and then like at the bigger levels in actually like the war zones and things like that, you have these intents, and then as a team, you're expected to figure out how to do them. And then everybody inside the team has their little group, whether you're the breacher, the sniper,
and intent is like, here's the mission.
Yeah. Like really what you're given is like, this is the end goal.
And then you figure out how to do it.
You got to figure out how to do it. And, it wasn't until much later, and reading especially that book by Stanley McChrystal, Team of Teams, where he actually discusses that exact period of time and how that whole decentralized leadership came about and why, and the fact that it's just so much more nimble. And really without it, you're so bogged down by bureaucracy and inefficiency that you will not win. It was super interesting. And then for me, like even running the manufacturing companies and things like that, I mean, it was always my expectation, and it wasn't calculated like, oh, I'm going to give somebody this task and it wasn't like a test either. It's the expectation of, if I can't tell this person to do this and have them do it, then they're just not the right person.
Right.
And it's not like in a menacing way. It's not like a threat, or it's just that's the way a team works. I mean, at any team I've been on, if you have the right people, one, they don't want you to tell them how to do it. And two, they will certainly know how to do it. And if you have to tell them, then you could just do it yourself or have AI do it. But, it's really not, so it's again, it's not like giving, like, cause like saying I give a lot of rope, like that's the expression of like, so you can hang yourself, that's not the idea. Is
that where it came from?
Well, I don't know. That's the way
I thought it's just like slack. So you like,
well, I get it, but I think there's that expression of like,
okay,
I'm going to give you enough rope so you can hang yourself. So I think of it more as like, you're on my team. If you're good enough to be on my team, you're good enough to figure out how to do your job. And again, I think that could be construed as like, we're going to be in this like cutthroat dog eat dog. Like if you're not good enough, you're gone, which yes, it's true. If you're not good enough, you're gone, but it's not, you're not trying to just test people constantly for mundane tasks just to see if they can figure out, like what's the sound of one hand clapping. We have jobs to do. And if you I mean, if you can't do your job, then you should find a different one.
Which is much easier for us as a startup because we can control that.
Right. And I think like in the case of Ben, like we had like a 20-minute or 30-minute interview scheduled with Ben that turned into like a 2-hour conversation. I think he's like a very bright, hardworking, ambitious guy, beyond his years with some of his business acumen and things like that. And I don't think he wants to be micromanaged. But certainly we have to align on strategy, and that's more about just talking as a team. Not, again, it's not like tests. It's not, is he good enough? It's like, I think he is. I mean, I know he's good enough.
Yeah.
And we have jobs to do, so that's what we're going to do. I do find it very fascinating, the whole group dynamic thing. The forming, or storming, forming. What the hell is it now?
Forming,
storming, norming, performing.
Yeah,
it's like my favorite thing, and I don't know it. But and that was something that I borrowed from the military, because when you're in the platoon, it's a 2-year cycle. So you have a platoon of guys, and the first day, like many people will know each other, but maybe not well. Many people won't know each other at all, and so then you have to you figure it out. And the whole forming, storming, norming, performing thing is you form a team, and that's like you start it. And then you storm, and that's when you start to figure it out. So forming, the traits of the forming stage are everybody's excited to be there. Oh, this is new. This is going to be awesome. Hey, my name's Chris, and then it's like you go out, you have beers, everybody's jazzed. And then everybody's also kind of polite in the forming stage. Like you're not ruffling feathers quite yet. Everybody's just going to be cool. And then you get to the storming phase. And the storming phase is when the rubber meets the road and you start to have to actually do things. And so that's when the biggest thing that lacks is the pecking order. And even in the military where there is rank, there's still pecking. I mean, there's going to be people that emerge as the natural leaders. Within each rank, there's going to be a pecking order. And it's not official, but it's just life. I mean, in any group, there's always going to be sort of this jockeying for like who's the what, who's the coolest, who's the best, who's the fastest, who's the guy that's going to get all the accolades, whatever. And so you have to figure that out. And that's when people there's a lot of conflict, interpersonal conflict in the storming phase. So the storming phase necessitates strong leadership. That's where a successful team is either built or it falls apart. And what it requires is that's where you require very explicit direction from the leadership as to this is the intent. We're all focused on this goal. And there needs to be some management of like who's going to do this, who's in charge of what. You can't let things, as a leader in the storming phase, you can't let things simmer. You can't let people figure it out because there's too much interpersonal conflict. And you need to have good conflict resolution processes in that situation so that, number one, conflict is it's not necessarily bad to have conflict. It's natural, it's needed, it's how people are going to figure things out. But you can't let conflict get to a point where it becomes destructive. Yeah. So you have to have those good conflict resolution processes in place as a leader.
What's an example of that?
Well, let's just say you have two people that are in different departments. We'll use like a business scenario. Let's say you have like the finance department and the sales department, and they're not getting along because the finance department is accusing sales of selling things at too low of a margin, and the sales department is accusing the finance department of not invoicing their customers correctly and causing them problems. So like those two, and you're going to have your leaders of each one of those groups that are going to be at odds. So you can't like just say, because I mean, even there's all these dumb Ideas of like, oh, you got to sit them in a room and say, you guys just figure it out, and I don't want to hear about it. Like, you have to have that's bad, because they may not figure it out. They may just decide that they hate each other as much as they thought. And now you have a very dysfunctional organization. So what you need to do is you need to be, again, it is very uncomfortable, especially, and this is not a hypothetical story. Like, when you are sort of the leader and you're between these two or more groups that are having a conflict, and everybody's like, what is the decision? And you have to then, you're going to piss somebody off or everybody off. You have so much to balance between, like, in your mind, you're like, well, I don't want people to get so upset that they quit. I don't want to look like I'm favoring one or the other. Like, there's just this ridiculous, like, politics and emotion and things like that. And you have to separate. As the leader, you have to separate that. And I think it goes back to just using the data to make the decision. And in some cases, everybody's wrong. In some cases, maybe one is right and one is wrong. Whatever it is, but you have to put yourself in that position as the leader. So from a conflict resolution standpoint, rule number 1 is be there. And I think if you don't even know what rule number 2 and rule number 3 are, if you do rule number 1, you're probably going to be fine. Mm-hmm. But you have to be, and again, it sucks. It really is not. It's harder to do than say, because it really is not fun to be in the middle of that sort of conflict when really just everybody's going to be upset with you. And it's not so much that I would say most people are like, I don't really care if people are upset with me. But if you're trying to lead an organization to be efficient and successful, what you're worried about is that they're going to be upset and not being a good part of the team. Now, eventually you have to come to the conclusion, if they really aren't being a good part of the team, then they need to go. And that's, again, another big disruption. And I have had instances where I've made big changes at senior level positions, and it is a frightening proposition, because you really don't know what the reaction is going to be. And we've seen this many times. The fear of like, everybody loves that guy, we can't let him go, and if we do that, then this customer is going to leave, and this key employee is going to leave, and this person's going to be upset, and their brother-in-law works in shipping and he's going to leave.
Yeah.
And it freezes people. And I'm talking about experienced.
We saw that every day in the private equity world.
And I mean, it freezes people from doing anything. So instead they let bad fits just stay and create problems. Invariably, when I have made those big changes, it's a 3-phase reaction. Again, you have to be there. That's the key. If you are there, the first phase of the reaction is people are shocked. And you have to be there. And you have to be very clear on why. But here's the thing. Nobody actually gives a shit about the person who got fired. They don't. Because people are self-interested. Not in a bad way. That's not like a ding on people. It's just, if you are at a job and your boss gets fired who you loved, the first person you're going to think about is you and your family. Like, oh, does this mean I'm next? Yeah. Does this mean I'm going to get fired? Does this mean my job is going to change? You're worried about, and you should be, because you're putting food on the table for your family. So, man, that sucks that Jim, got fired, but what does this mean for me? So the first, you have to address that with people, because they're going to be afraid, and you have to manage their fear and say, this is what's going to happen. This is what it means for you. Most of the time it's nothing. If it means something for them, you should make that very clear at the moment. But most of the time it's like, we're going to do this. We're going to organize this. We're going to do this. Phase number 2 is that little storming. It's like a mini storming phase, where now everybody's trying to figure out what is life like with this new organizational structure, whether it's no boss, a different boss, different whatever. And in that situation, you have to manage the most granular tasks. You have to be like, Susan, you're doing this, and Jimmy, you're doing that, and John, you're doing this, and we're going to report in at 3 p.m. today. And then 9 a.m., we're going to start tomorrow. Everybody's going to get their tasks. We'll check in at 3 p.m. And you have to be like super granular. But every single time that I've seen this, within, I don't know, days, you start to see that people, one, they get the cadence. But two, they start figuring out other things they can do, better ways to do it. Like when you release that, whatever the negativity was around the change that you made, you free this path for people to just excel. And soon they're like telling you, we don't need this meeting anymore. We got it.
Yeah.
Every time people figure it out, but it's like that fear of making the change prevented, and people will live in misery. It's amazing how people will live in unhappiness. So they're shocked for a minute, then they're worried about themselves. As long as you guide them through that, they're off to the races.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing. But yeah, people are afraid to do that so often.
So you went through the 3 phases of the storming, norming.
Oh yeah.
Performing's the last one,
right? Storming's the big one. You get through storming, you're in the home stretch. Then it's norming. Norming is, okay, now we've had some conflict. We know how to resolve it if we have conflict. We know who's who in the zoo. We know this guy does this. He's the boss of this. If you really want, birthday cake, go see this woman. If everybody knows who's who. And then you get to norming. Norming is, okay, now we're going to start to create like a rhythm, cadences. And that's where you start to get into some of the more managerial stuff like, KPIs. I'm going to do reports. I'm going to do this. We're going to figure out the strategy. So you're just kind of higher level. And then performing is you're a well-oiled machine. And that's where, again, now the big thing in performing is don't get complacent. Now you got to, if it's me, this isn't everybody. If it's me, I get to performing, I'll blow the thing up and start over. We got to figure something else out to do now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you actually have to destroy whatever you've built, but you need to figure out a new challenge. Either grow, invest in something, do whatever. But
that's like what Sand says, where he said, I think he was on a podcast. I don't know if it was in his book or on a podcast, but they asked, like, why don't you stick around with the companies you help turn around? And he's like, I get way too bored with that. I need constant action.
There's a personality type that just wants to maintain.
Yeah.
And that's cool, but that's not, that wouldn't be for me.
So would you say that Lokavana is in the forming stage?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we've had any real conflict yet.
Right.
There's only 3-4 of us, so probably not a lot of conflict. But we've also talked about this. The thing for me, when you talk about conflict, there shouldn't be this connotation that it has to be anger or like yelling and screaming. Like it should just be, I think, and any organization I've run, there is no room for emotional, anger-driven conversation. Like,
never effective.
It's not effective, and it's also stupid. Like, why would you be angry about? Well, here's it's like goes back to the AI thing, but it's like, what is the purpose of anger even? Like, if you're angry about something, it just means you don't understand it. So just go understand it. And if there's 2 differing viewpoints, it's an equation. Like, okay, what is the outcome of this? What is the outcome of that? What are the inputs? And how can we either choose the better one or combine them? Most of the time it's combine them. Like 99% of the time, if there's 2 different opinions, there's probably merit in each. And the best thing you can do is like now you should think like a robot, like especially in conflict. That's where robots got us. Conflict resolution. They'd be great at it.
So why, I agree with you. So then why are certain coaches viewed as great leaders when they have big emotional, speeches to their team? They get super mad. They grab a guy's face mask to motivate them. Like that doesn't happen in the business world. And I don't think that'd be effective at all in the business world, but it seems to be somewhat effective in certain situations in the sports world?
Well, I think it's two things. I think with a coach, one, I think a lot of that is manufactured, or and again, not in a bad way or in a phony way, but I think they're doing that as a way to elicit certain performances out of people. I don't think if somebody grabs somebody by the face mask and it's literally like, I'm pissed and I'm going to assert dominance over you, I don't think that would fly, especially because most of the coaches are like half the weight of the people they're grabbing the face mask.
It happens though.
I know, but I think that they're not actually, if it was like, I'm going to fist fight you because I'm mad at you, that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're using physical touch in that circumstance, because like humans respond to physical touch. You know, you can put your hand on someone's shoulder, you can grab their elbow, you know, you can give them, you know, hug. Like there's a thing like that, and all animals do, and all animals touch each other. Dogs do it, you know, to sort of like snap each other out of it. So I think they're using like that physical gesture and that emotional tone to put somebody's mindset in a certain place. And a good coach, in fact, I would say the only people that are qualified to coach would be the ones that know the player and the situation and how that player responds to those various types of things. Because I guarantee you, if you talk to a good, successful coach, if they're grabbing somebody by the face mask, they know that they're not actually going to make them play worse, because they would be a stupid coach to do that. If it's like, I'm pissed at this guy and I'm going to go grab him so he knows I'm the boss and I'm going to make him feel worse about himself because he just screwed up, very ineffective. If it's like, hey, this guy needs to know that he's still a part of this team, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to go, you know, rattle his cage and say, you know, perk up. And then I'm going to go over and like, after he's calmed down, and I'm going to go tell him like, you know, you're still the man and here's what to do on the next play. I think it's all very calculated. And I think that I don't think that being a good leader or coach or anything in a leadership position is about never being negative to people or not having conflict. I think conflict is super necessary. I think it's about managing it so that it's effective. So like when you do have a situation where somebody does need, you know, people go out of bounds sometimes and they need to be brought back in, and that needs to be done in a way that they feel respected, but also that, yes, I was in the wrong and I need to get back in the right. You know, the boundaries need to be very clear. And that's the nuance of leading. It's not, you know, it's not about being liked necessarily all the time. It's about being respected, but I think being respected goes hand in hand with respecting also. So again, if a coach was going to go yell at a guy just to be a dick, he would not be, especially at high levels. You know, that's like little league.
You have to have the respect.
Yeah, you have to have their respect. And if they view, and I also think anger, the other reason I hate it, especially in business, is anger is just weakness. Right. Like if you're angry, you have lost your own control. And I think that's a very weak and not respected stance. So people that fly off the handle and all that. So from Locavana's standpoint, you know, I'm sure we haven't agreed on everything, but I would say I don't like anticipate a tremendous amount of conflict. I think it'll be, and especially with a startup, I mean, you're talking about, we could be storming for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So during that time, I mean, it's just going to be a matter of managing, you know, it becomes more difficult when you start to have layers. Like right now, there's 4 of us and we talk every day. So we can talk directly. When you start to have layers and it's like, well, now there's this guy leading this group of people, that's when it gets hairier, because now that guy, you know, he needs to represent the interest of the overall organization. He's going to have his own style and he's going to have his own individuals to cope with the way that they respond to things. But we're going to have to keep the culture driving down. And so eventually we'll have, you know, things in 50 different states, many cities, hundreds of cities. And each one of them needs to feel the culture that we develop, but not through us directly. And that's the difficulty. I liked, I think it was in Lou Gershner's book about IBM, the turnaround of IBM, who said elephants can't dance. I think it was in that book. Somebody will fact check this, I'm sure. But he said culture is when somebody makes the decision you would have made without you being there. I've always liked that. I think that's that's really good. And again, I think there's a lot of ways to do that. Part of it is through communicating, right? Obviously, and making sure people know how you would be. But I think a lot of it comes down to those 2 or 3 big decisions you make, because those are the shots heard around the world. So the way that you react in those critical moments will matter, and people will emulate that. And that's just a natural human thing. I mean, you will emulate, unless, even if it's not necessarily on purpose, when you're in a team that you like being on, you will emulate the leaders in some way. And so when it comes to like how do we deal with an upset customer? If you have done that and people know how you've done it, then they will do it in a style similar to that, because even if, again, I think it's subconscious to a degree, but it's also like, well, that's the way he does it, so I can't get in trouble if I do it like that. You know?
To the point on the ideas, making 2 to 3 big important decisions each year. I think what we've been pretty good at is aligning on what our path forward is on those things. And like initially, very rarely do we all 3 agree on what our path is on that big decision. Yeah. And it's like we all are opinionated. We all have our initial thoughts. And it's hard when you've got an opinion and someone has a differing one and you've actually put thought into it. It's really hard to let that idea go because you have confidence in yourself and you have confidence in your idea. But I think we've done a good job. It's like once everyone talks it out, there's not like, you're not tied to your own idea. It's getting to the best one. Right. And I think we've been really good at aligning as a team on.
That's a good point. You know that there's another factor that comes into play, especially in the group dynamics. And again, this one's really nuanced, but in the situation where we're co-founders, right? If you have all the good ideas and I have no good ideas, I don't give a shit because I just want the thing to work. Right. When you get into an organization, now you have layers. Let's say we have 100 employees. It is natural for people to want to have good ideas and be recognized for having good ideas because that's how they would perceive their value to the organization.
Because they don't have the ownership in the result.
Right. Now, my thing is, well, part of it is the ownership. Part of it is the incentive, right? Is, we own the thing. If we have no good ideas for the rest of our life, but somebody else has them all and we benefit from that, then super for us, right? That's not, but for somebody who's like, I have a salary and, and this is way down the line, but like, I'm just going to get paid. I'm clocking in and clocking out. I just need to make sure that they know that this was my idea because I'm not going to make any more money from it or less if it's not a good idea, but I want the recognition for it because I want to keep my job. And you have to make it like there are people, and I try and be like this when I'm in like the leadership role because it's the easiest. It's easier for I think the leader to do this, but like if you just make all the assists. So like sometimes one of the things that people don't like to do is in a meeting or something, like say an idea. Again, it's the type 1. I don't want to look like it was a stupid thing to say. So sometimes if like if the idea generator is not flowing yet, I'll just throw out whatever, just a stupid ass comment just to do it, just because it sparks it, right? It sparks the conversation. And then somebody says, well, that's dumb, but here, what about this? Or what about this angle on that? But having the good assist people in the organization who aren't necessarily going to be the ones that are like, I came up with this brilliant idea, but they make everybody else come up with good ideas and they helped. And that is just as valuable. And so you really need to be very conscious of creating that culture where, you're not recognizing like, and it's nuanced because you have to recognize individual contribution to make people feel good about being there, but you really want to recognize the team wins and the value that everybody played in that. So that's the part when you're in a bigger organization is like, how do you deal with the individual contribution, the individual incentives, and creating that culture where first of all, because if it's too much like the individual, then it starts to become backstabbing and people taking credit for other people saying, and that becomes so petty and not helpful.
Politics game.
So you really need to our goal, the way we all succeed is when the whole thing succeeds. And whatever anybody did in the meantime doesn't matter because every member of this team is important, or otherwise you wouldn't be here. And I think there needs to be structures that reward everybody for the group success too.
I think the incentives are the most important thing you can do there.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everybody's self-serving, and that's not an insult. It's just life. So
I couldn't believe in our past life, or I guess my past life, like working with manufacturing companies, like they didn't incentivize the people actually doing the work at all.
No.
And it's like when they didn't go above and beyond to, get this customer order out the door and on a tight deadline, it's like, well, why don't you think they didn't stay a couple hours later? It's because there's no incentive for them to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, and that goes right back to the AI thing. Because the only people you can't replace right now with AI are people that do work.
So far. Then those robots will be.
And then you fucked my whole thing up with your little theory about robots replacing us all. And I guess that's going to be what it's going to be.
We're in the golden age right now. We got a few more good years left.
That's it. Let's make the best of them.
Cool.
Dude, it was a good conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I figured it would be. We'll look back on this one in 20 years. It'll be fun. Actually, that'll be fun. Unless we're dead because of robots. But assuming robots allow us to listen to this, it'll be a good one.
Yeah, I'm excited to listen to it while we're in it because you hear people who've already been successful and they talk about their routines that they do, and it's all nonsense.
It's too easy.
It's not what they did in that moment.
Yes, that's true. We should do this every once in a while, just check in. And we should definitely, this is what we should do. We should write this down in an envelope. When we're in the middle of the storming phase at some point, and we're both just fucking at the end of it, we should just open that envelope up and be like, we said we would do a podcast episode right now to capture the real.
To go back to when we're like, we don't have much conflict. It's all pretty easy.
We had a really good strategy the whole time.
That's it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's it, I guess, for now.
Till next time.
Yeah.
Hit the music.
Yeah. Drum time.